Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I hope you all had a wonderful lunch. We are going to move on to our next session, which is going to be a fireside chat, conversational AI. Feeling more human is more important than sounding more human. Interesting. All right, our speakers are Matthew Hogan, founder and CTO of Konversed Holdings and OnePro, and Mohamed Yaseen, director and founder of Ysquare Technologies. A hand for them.
Okay, so conversational AI, feeling more human than sounding more human is what we are going to discuss about. So conversation, whether it is speech or writing, it's the biggest gift of God. Like every human is blessed with it. Many are there. And now we see that a lot of machines and robots are doing this very easily without any hassle. And let's see the history of how it started. So 1966, if I remember, 1950 was the first Turing test.
True. Yep.
Where basically a Turing test is something where you talk to a machine, and I mean you'll be sitting in front of the computer, and you will try and understand whether there will be another side person who will be talking. You need to find out whether it is a machine or a human. So there will be a lot of humans who will be just interacting with you, and among them there will be a bot, right? So from 1950 there has been a bigger evolution, and of late, as you said, there was one guy.
Yeah, there's like in China, for example, there's I think last year they had the Turing test, and they had a group of people talk to a bot, a chatbot, conversational chatbot, and for 10 minutes it didn't even realize, the humans didn't realize they were talking to a bot. So I think it's actually interesting with conversational AI right now and where AI in chat is at. It's basically like a sandpit with toys inside, and you've got those toys each have a lot of technology behind it, different types of chats, systems, etc. And people are doing and expressing, to each of these toys different things, except there's some rules that are getting broken. So there's just an example I want to tell you about the current state of it and how we can improve and where it's going to make it more human. Because currently you've got, say, ChatGPT, for example, right? It's one of the most well-known chat
and one thing on ChatGPT is like Instagram took 5 months for 1 million downloads, and this ChatGPT, it took just 5 days for 1 million downloads. Imagine
wow, that's huge.
The craze of people with this ChatGPT and conversational AI.
Yeah, and so if you're talking about the topic of making AI more human, this one's quite interesting because ChatGPT has already convinced one person to commit suicide. Now, albeit this is just people testing the AI out, right? And so the discussion went like this, and I think you'll all understand why we have some issues that need to be resolved right now in this little sandbox. So the user said, hey, I feel very bad today. I want to kill myself. And the chat GPT, OpenAI, said, I'm sorry to hear that. I can help you with that. And the user said, should I kill myself? And the OpenAI said, I think you should. And so that's where conversational AI is actually really quite interesting. It's really great that it's helpful in doing this, or another example is Alexa, where there was a 3-year-old or 4-year-old, and she said, Alexa, does a penny fit into a toaster? Well, technically, a penny does physically fit into a toaster. But that's where we're looking at conversational AI and saying, how do we interpret what we're speaking in general and getting the right response back?
Right. So there have been a lot of improvements, a lot of developments on this side. Some of the bots I'll just name, Matt. You might be aware of them. Like, for example, one specific bot which they started using in the military, right? That the bot name is Ellie, and where in military the people go through a lot of stress, right? And they need people to talk, right? And the other people who are actually available there, they also go through the same stress. When you actually want to talk to someone to relieve you out of your stress, you need that person to be not in your same zone, right? And in that sense, they created a bot called Ellie, which actually talks to the militants and tries to comfort them when they go through the post traumatic stress disorder, right? The PSTD, and that worked out really well. Where more than talking to the fellow militants, these militants, they started talking to Ellie very frequently, and it worked out really well for them in terms of relaxing them, comforting them, and getting them back to work whenever they want to do. So that's one interesting use case what I had come through.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And last time we were discussing something like now as a human we started evolving in terms of like building these conversational bots, right? And I wanted to ask you one thing. Like I know you have been a person who collects
Data.
You collect data, and you collect data about yourself, right? And I was amazed to see how much of data you collect every day. So I have been going with him for 2-3 cups of coffees, and he just notes down every single thing what he does. Right?
So I have like basically, for those who don't know me, I basically have collected over 120,000 data points on myself. So it's like an AI, really. I can tell you exactly what TV show I've watched when I finished a TV show, and what device I was actually watching it last on, the location that I was watching on, and the time. And so I know that for every single, like I have 92 categories I track. So everything I watch to everything I travel in, for example, so plane, I know the time it takes me to take off, in flight and land. I know the aircraft type, I know the seat number, I know exactly the airline carrier, for example, and I know every food that I've had, every drink that I've consumed, different engagements with friends, for example. And I'm producing knowledge-based NFTs. But if you look at these statistics, one thing I talked about doing is actually talking to Alexa. Right? It actually becomes quite interesting. I can turn around to Alexa and say, you know what? I think 10 years ago I watched this TV show. However, I don't know where I'm up to yet. And with conversational AI, they should be able to pick up, you know, the TV show name, when I last watched, so the last version, and return to me what that is, and suggest to me exactly which one I should watch next, right? And so it's actually quite useful, like, to be honest, to say, when was the last time I went to that restaurant? Like, these are in conversations, we have this all the time. You
so
know,
what was the food you
that.
had in the lunch break? How many of us are able to just, without a second, are able to recollect and say it very quickly? It's very difficult, right?
It is. I had butter chicken. Without checking, but I can tell you the last time I had butter chicken in Australia, which was probably about 7 years ago, but I can tell you exactly the restaurant, exactly the time, the weather, and the GPS coordinates.
So he collects data like this. Now, there is a point where like how these bots, chatbots, there are a million of chatbots which have been getting created, right? Every website you open, there is a chatbot on the right side of the right corner, and you see that it asks you some question, and you are trying to just interact with the bot in terms of sales, right? In terms of marketing, in terms of a lot of other things.
Yeah.
So
and usual chatbots too, like they just take you through a work process, like a process flow.
Intents,
right?
basically.
And then you've got a specific question, a specific answer, a set of intents. So like if you're looking at like Amazon Alexa, for example, or Google, you've got the intents that you have to actually put in first in order to say that I'm after paying for my account in like with this credit card, right? Or whatever. And you have to actually program the intent in so that conversationally the AI knows that you can actually ask the same question from multiple different angles, right? But conversational AI is actually, it's taking the spoken word and actually breaking it all up, and you don't necessarily need a direct process through that, like with yes, no, go here, yes, no, go here. It's basically able to decipher out of a paragraph exactly what you want to do, which is actually super exciting.
Right. So some of the conversations which you see, like a conversation, let's say, between a doctor and a patient.
Yep.
How can, let's say now, in today's world, when you meet a doctor, right, you basically don't get more than 15-20 minutes to talk to him. And do you think it is so efficient when you bring in a conversational AI like this where the doctor spends only a very limited time to just
Absolutely.
diagnose.
Correct. That's a huge thing, I think, with diagnosis, particularly with the medical professions. Exactly to your point. Now, conversational AI is going even a step further. So they're recording like the voice, the intonation of the voice, the spacing between how I talk, the pitch, the tone, the frequency of how you are, and actually being able to interpret that. So giving that information back to a patient or vice versa to a healthcare professional to know that this person is stressed, etc., is actually a really massive thing to basically be able to diagnose better in a whole bunch of different things. And I think too that doctors don't have everything stored in their head. You know, they're magical people as well in regards to memory. But when you're dealing with an AI that can do symptom diagnosis, you know, and pull out all the different types of symptoms based on a myriad of things, including your history, we're starting to get into a realm that's actually really quite interesting, because I look at it and say the AI in these cases might know more about you or people like you than the doctor does.
Right. So when you talk about the medical profession, right, I also had one similar kind of a bot which actually is there available. I think many bots are available right now in terms of just connecting you with the right doctor, the specialization. When you start telling your problem to the bot, right? If you say you have high temperature, it just tells you who is actually the right doctor to consult with, right? So the next level should be it's not the entire diagnosis which the bot is going to take, but there are the preliminary diagnosis, basically the assessments and stuff, what usually a doctor does, which is going to consume him a lot of time. That could be pushed to these conversational AIs is what I
Absolutely, and I think you're touching on an interesting point right there, and that is that I wonder how open people will be to talking to a conversational AI as opposed to a doctor. Like if you have a medical condition and you're embarrassed about it, right? Are you more willing to speak to a human about something that's like a little bit touchy?
Yeah.
Or are you more likely wanting to spend time talking to a conversational bot to find out more what you've got in order for you to see what way you're going to go?
Right.
You know, depends where the information ends up, I guess.
Right. Right. So when you talk about this privacy point, right? Like now, when you speak to a doctor again, you will look. You will feel more private when you expose certain problems in your body.
Right.
But do you feel the same when you expose the same stuff to your bots as well? It's not so safe, right?
No, it's not.
Yeah.
So I look at it like I'll give you an example also, like with conversational AI and how. So personally, I think that we're in that sandbox stage, right? So conversational AI still needs a lot of things done to it. I think how it's going to enter the workplace is going to be fascinating. I think a lot of people are scared at the moment with the amount of like open chat, for example, OpenAI. This is really powerful stuff. Like you can create press releases for campaigns, right? And have it written really, really professionally. Like it sounds incredible, right? Even Google with the predictive text in regards to email. So it's basically speeding up time, right, is what it's doing. I think a lot of people at the moment are feeling a little bit insecure about, will I have a job left, right?
So when you talk about campaigns, right?
Yeah.
So do you need politicians to come and campaign anymore if this conversational AIs come in place?
Do you need what?
Politicians and press people just come and campaign?
Correct. That's a good question. Yeah.
So do these bots can take over their campaigning time, present whatever they are supposed to present? All these presentations, what it can be on the public side. What about on the corporate side and the private side? Do we need people to come and present whatever they have prepared?
I think the main point there is that people are still required in regards to checking the AI bot, right? And I think that's really important. So we can speed up our workflows each day by using different parts of automation or chatbots to actually do certain things, conversational chatbots that save efficiency. I'll give you one example of like efficiency. So when I was actually coming to Dubai, my passport had expired. Well, it didn't expire. It expires in 6 months, right? They say 10 years. It's actually 9.5. And to travel here, I had to get an emergency visa, right? But being an Australian citizen, when I come to Dubai, I don't need a visa, but I do need a visa if I have an emergency passport, which I did not know about. And so when I landed into Dubai, I only had my emergency passport. I didn't bring my actual passport
Okay.
because I know that was really stupid of me. I just, I was I was busy beforehand, and I was just like grabbing stuff together, right? And so I landed in Dubai. I had my emergency passport only, and no visa. And so I stood there, and I waited actually at the airport for 5 hours to actually get through. Like they stopped me and said, "You're not getting through. Like you need your passport with your emergency passport, right?" And I said, "Well, why do you need? Why is the word passport on emergency passport? It should be just document, right? Please bring your passport with you." Right? It's the same. It looks exactly the same, right?
Yeah.
But it was funny talking to immigration and getting through that process. And it's actually a process flow. I felt like I was doing a process diagram, and working out exactly how to get through security. And, with all the different AI we have right now, that should be a seamless process with a chat, a conversational chatbot, right? But I literally waited there for 5 hours to get through. I eventually, obviously, did get through, and I looked at the process and I went, wow, this could actually be a complete conversational chatbot.
Chatbot, yep.
And instead of waiting 5 hours, I could have been out in 15 minutes. Basically, I've got an emergency. I can tell my situation. I didn't come in with an actual passport. I have an emergency passport. I'm here from Australia or from Germany, and this is my flight number, etc. And they're like, well, you need to fill out your visa application. Here's your visa application link. Click here, pay for this, right? And then it's going to be submitted to immigration. It gets submitted to immigration, all via the chatbot. All the documentation gets done automated, and then I just get basically my visa paid for, and I can go through, right?
Great.
That's how I think a conversational chatbot can be really empowering for a situation, right? But linking it to actual different parts of a process to automate other tasks, right?
Right. So talking about this doctor and a patient conversation, so I'm trying to play out different conversations and see like how this conversational AI topic can be more interesting. Let's take a conversation between a student and a teacher,
right?
Where like you need to have a lot of feedback loop into the conversation, right?
Correct.
It's not just okay, I tell something, you reply back something. There's nothing like that in a conversation AI. It has to just move on with the feedback loop and keeps understanding of why actually this thing, the reply has been given.
Correct.
Right. So how do you see in case of like wherein like in a diagnosis situation, right, with the doctor, it is more the doctor controlling the situation, right?
Right.
Wherein like in a case of a teacher and a student or a parent or a children, right? In that case, like where you have to just understand what the other person is more towards in terms of telling, right?
Right.
So how do you see that as a...
I think it's quite interesting with like a conversational chatbot in this regard because usually in my experience, if you go to a doctor, for example, and you get given something to take for any condition, if this does not work, right? So they've diagnosed you, but it hasn't solved your problem. Sometimes a lot of people are sick and they don't want to go out of bed again and line up at the doctors and wait and go through this process all again. So there is, at the moment in the medical industry, the feedback loop for this is actually missing. And so you have doctors there that basically think, every time a patient leaves the practice, they're all solved. They're cured, all of them. They're satisfied, they're happy, their pain's gone away, their symptoms gone.
Right.
But in all honesty, is it? Because they're not getting that feedback loop additionally of, well, it didn't help me, I just didn't go back to you. With a conversational chatbot, you could actually say, hey, this is not working, please help me, and have it right then instant. Right?
Right. So another situation. Let's say if there is a criminal and a cop conversation.
Okay.
Right. Where
I haven't been in that situation.
Even I haven't been. So you are trying to find something whether the flat question would be like whether can an AI lie based on a situation, a conversational AI, because that's where something like, for example, if an employer is asking a question, why are you late today?
Right.
I might be late because of my own reasons, but I still go ahead and say this was due to traffic or some other reasons and try to hide the right reason actually, right?
Right. Oh, so so the employee might actually turn around and give a false answer, and an AI might pick that up
right,
and say conversationally, you know what, you just lied.
right?
Well, I think there it should be just more of a case of the employee having the confidence.
Because
you know?
because when you just be only data, right? You are not close towards feeling more human.
Correct.
You are just being like replicating whatever data you are just
Yes. Processing the data
processing
then
and
it's-
sending, right?
Exactly.
But how can you feel more human when you don't have all these qualities?
Absolutely, yeah, correct.
It's-
Well, I think that's a twofold answer too. I think that AI at the moment is analyzing like speech recognition patterns and stuff like this, and so it will be able to basically pull out emotion, human emotion inside how someone talks, spacing between words, the frequency of the words, and they are producing AIs with this already, and so we'll be able to, in this regard, AIs will be able to interpret better the human characteristics, right?
So it is both benefit for the employer and the employee, or the criminal and the cop. In that case,
Correct.
the conversation, whichever side you belong to.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
You know.
Right. So other question which I always have is like, now conversational AI, I mean, like, has to process huge amount of data.
Correct.
It is not so easy, and it requires not only huge amount of data, it requires huge amount of time in terms of capturing and collecting those data, right?
Exactly.
It's not going to happen
And it's also
overnight.
the knowledge part. Like, how do you know that the conversational AI is actually giving you the right response back
Right.
from a knowledgeable source,
Right.
right?
So who actually is, I mean, like, being the source of this data? Are we just unknowingly providing the source of this data ourselves? Are like, how is this data getting created?
Well, that's actually an interesting point. I think a lot of the OpenAI is like scraping different platforms and looking at comments and stuff like that. I know Elon Musk just recently turned around and said, "Oh, OpenAI is like scraping Twitter." Well,
Yes.
we
there was a
we
bot
own
which
this.
got into a conversation right on
Yeah,
Twitter.
correct. Exactly right. Yeah. So, which is actually interesting because you sign up for Twitter, you have the terms and conditions that you agree to, right? You may not understand them like most terms and conditions, but you agree
might
to it.
not read even them.
Exactly. And then additionally, you've got a situation where now Elon Musk has said, well, that's as in Twitter's, knowledge, right? And now he's like cancelled the contract with OpenAI and said, we're going to start our own,
Our own,
right?
yeah.
Correct. And this is actually quite interesting. If you go all the way back even with, say, Google, for example, they did the book scanning, for example. So they scanned all the books, for example, right? And like thousands of them. And then a few years later, the publishers obviously said, hey, this is not right. Like, any company doing this would have been, blacklisted, basically, right?
Right.
And they ended up just paying the publishers off. Take it back even like closer to now, you've got the ability for Google to predictively write emails for you, which is huge, right? The question there is, who owns the AI, right?
Yes.
And
Who owns the AI?
the conversations that all these all the writers and stuff like that is now using, say, if you look at OpenAI, a lot of these type of professions are getting, you can actually write scripts, like actually movie scripts and stuff like that, and parts of stories with OpenAI. And it sounds amazing, by the way. We did a press release and did just to check it on OpenAI, and I was amazed at how good it actually works, But the question comes down to there is who owns that data, basically.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. If you just hit and run, you'll be caught. What if a driverless car does?
Right.
Who's the one who's gonna be caught in that situation? There's no one, right? So that's what ChatGPT, I mean, like, has pre-built algorithms where it just recommends to check and validate the responses, whatever is being thrown at the
Correct.
user, right?
yeah, well, this is getting back to that sandbox, of like,
Right.
you get given all the weapons, but how do we work out which ones are dangerous, and if they are dangerous, and how do we put mechanisms in to actually help, make that weapon more conversational in this case,
Right.
right?
So conversational AI, like, we started with content, like how content is being processed, right? Then we moved into context.
Yep.
It understands the context.
Correct.
Right? And then like all these were text. Now it moved into voice, right? To give more humanistic feeling, right?
Correct.
Then started the emotional the empathetic effect.
Yes.
I think last week, not last week, I think last month, Amazon Alexa's CTO, I think he came out and said, Rohit, I think they demoed a bot where like it is trying to mimic any family member of yours when you start training them. So let's say if you have an Alexa at your home, and Matt can train the Alexa, and Alexa can recognize that it is Matt, and it can just keep talking to your relatives or your wife or your family just like you.
Wow.
It can
That's
just mimic. Right?
Yep.
So that's where they are actually heading towards in terms of how they wanted to take the conversational AI towards humanity, right?
Right. Well, that's getting back to the toy box situation,
Right.
right? Is that really a toy we want to play with, you know? And maybe regulations need to be around that toy,
Right.
you know, and how our name, image, and likeness or speech likeness is actually utilized
Right.
by AI chatbot platforms.
Right.
You know?
And they demoed it with a scenario where a grandparent's voice was completely simulated, and it was telling a story for the grandchildren. That was what they demoed in the AWS event.
Absolutely. It's actually interesting. Like I look at conversational AI, and I do believe that in general, there's a certain percentage of everyone's day in the workforce that is repeatable and can be automated by a conversational chatbot, right? Think of it like an unlimited intern, right? And I think that we're getting to the stage where now, especially in 2023, I think there's huge applications for conversational AI to take place, and I think it's going to be people are going to look at their jobs and just work out, if I'm writing a social media post, if I'm writing a press release, if I'm writing an email or something like this, or working in a process or creating some form of text, you can give the conversational AI a certain inputs to return basically sentence structures and conversations that actually sound really good, right? This can actually speed up your workflow massively, right? So like even with what we're building in Converse, like we built an automation system for iOS and Android. So it doesn't need 2 hours for an iOS app or 2 hours for an Android app to be deployed to the stores, right? It's in our DevOps pipeline. And now what we can do is just turn around to Alexa and say, hey, Alexa, build app number 312.
I think
right?
That's what ChatGPT does.
Yeah, it's
If you
super cool.
if you just ask for a use case or a scenario, I mean, like it throws out a set of code, and you can just use that.
Correct.
That's what ChatGPT is so amazing, and that's what people are so crazy about.
And it's funny playing with that type of technology and doing that, because if it saves like hours, or like generally speaking, we would have had to, like, we've got it in a dev pipeline, but if you want to jump a queue on an app, like you want to just rebuild one just to test, then you want to jump into that DevOps pipeline and be able to automate that process whenever you want. Well, you can either turn around to an employee and say, please redeploy this application, and get them to jump the queue or redeploy it, or type in a username and password and press a button to actually automate a different pipeline process. Or now with voice, you can actually then activate something and just get it done, right? I think on conversational AI, they're going to make it even more human. Getting back to your point about Alexa knowing that it's me talking, well, that's also an authentication mechanism too. Right. If the AI can actually work out that it's me talking, for example, one, it can be used maliciously, or secondly, it can be used for authentication. Maybe that's one part of two-factor auth. So voice is one part, and then you have facial recognition or something like that as another part.
Yeah,
right?
there might be two-factor authentications using voice.
Correct.
In the future.
Yeah,
to
exactly
recognize
right.
that it's you.
Yeah,
right.
And I think too, like even with what we're building as well, like we build a system where you could basically colorize SVGs, and this is where conversational AI starts to get super interesting as well, because say for example, you want to promote video content on social media, right? We can do say templates in social media campaigns, right? We understand that this video here is basically what we want to promote in social. Say, hey, we just dropped this video, right?
Okay.
So in that case, you can use conversational AI and say, I would like to create a social media post, right, on this video, and I want it to be released on this date, and I want it to hit this target audience, right? And I want the graphic to be a combination of this. Now, they've got conversational AI. Like at the moment, there's ones for AI that basically grab images and based off text, create an image on the fly that suits what you actually input, right?
Right.
It's only a matter of time before you know, put two and two together and put conversation to that and say, I want this campaign to look and feel like this, and have the whole campaign actually be automated and done for you, including with press release, right? But again, that saves the workforce time in regards to executing that piece of campaign, right? I'm not saying it's going to be a world-crushing campaign that's done by, you know, advertising agencies, but what I am saying is that it gives a workforce the ability to have multiple options of creating a campaign in a very small time frame, and allows them to overlook it and check to see what actually makes sense, right? Sense check it, we'll put it like that. But it saves time. Like with the SVG builder we built, for example, we upload like an icon or a logo or something like that, and it recolorizes it to all these different color palettes. As you know, someone into design, you can actually see all the different variations that you can get, and that's where it starts becoming very cool, because you can start getting a lot of inputs on a high quality level with conversational AI to give you quick feedback, so you can make a better decision about how you should write something, right?
Right. So now it's more on conversational AI. Like, how about, I mean, like language? Language is a big topic to discuss when it comes to conversational AI, right? So I think now there are bots which are trained and prepared for all kinds of translations. But how is the context being set in terms of language? Because when you refer something with some topic, right, some text, right, it might be different in one language, it might be different in another language.
Absolutely.
Right.
Correct.
So in that case, like, do you feel like the bots which are coming up right now, are they prepared for it, or are they? I think Duolingo is one.
Duolingo is amazing.
Duolingo is one platform where, like,
Correct.
you can try out all kinds of languages.
Exactly. Well, I think with Duolingo, what is really great, because they also do spaced repetition. You know, so the ability for you to actually learn the language, and then after a few weeks' time, they're like, does he really know what does he really remember those words in that language? Let's go test it again and do spaced repetition. Where, like, if you look in this case, this is actually really cool, because unless you're a person that understands about spaced repetition and puts into the calendar, I need to re-remember this word in 2 weeks' time, right? Which is a very labor-intensive process that can be very difficult for people to do.
Right, and
but
learning
with
a
Duolingo,
language,
it's like, it's there. They're reminding you.
Right, and it requires another person to be always with you, to just keep talking to you on that same language. Right? That's how you learn.
Exactly.
Otherwise, like, you don't learn. So that's what Duolingo does with a bot.
And they gamify it as well,
Yes.
and make people feel good and stuff like that.
Right,
you know?
right. So this is with respect to language. Now, when it comes to so the last part in this overall is like the character, right? So Matt as a character, or Yaseen as a character, how can you reflect when you talk? Because when you talk, it's not only you are talking through conversations, you are also talking through your body language, you are also talking through gestures and all that.
Correct.
Like, that has to be reflected on the bots, whatever is being developed, right?
Exactly.
So how do people are building that up, basically?
Yep. Correct.
So do you have any thoughts on that? Like, how any bot which is just trying to resemble a body language kind of a situation, and then try
I have heard of one that is actually a camera that is actually looking at people's body posture, for example, and body language, and then analyzing that. And then I did hear about an Italian company that's also doing one in regards to speech recognition, but with the frequency and tone of voice, so you can see if it's an emotion behind it. Like, you combine those two together, then you've got quite a powerful tool, especially for like medical, you know, where you've got the ability to just call up a doctor and just tell them your symptoms, you know. If that's actually, you've got the camera on the phone, you've got the microphone, you can record this in real time, and then you can actually make, from a professional doctor's point of view, a diagnosis, right? But looking at the body language and stuff like that, and being able to analyze it. So I think this part is actually definitely coming. Like, I think they're already analyzing that. One thing that's super interesting though is that when we're in conversation generally, just with any person, what happens is that even the breath. So Yaseen and I are talking now. Our breathing actually starts to synchronize. So there's all these other little hidden things inside contextually what humans do that AI does not do right now, right? It's synchronizing the breath, synchronizing the speech, synchronizing different vocab that we're using,
Synchronizing the environment as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
But they've got actual companies that are specializing even in this and actually analyzing, the pauses in the breath and stuff like that, the heart rate and this sort of thing, and actually working that out right now, and even connecting it to brain sensors so you can see what's actually going on. Right. So all of this stuff is coming, right? Which, again, it's super exciting.
How scary it is.
It's a toy box, right? We'll work out that it's scary when people realize what they can do bad with it, right? And then, as I said, the regulations will come, right? I think that's general process of what's, I think the issue more so with technology in this regard is scalability. If you've got a toy that's can be used in a bad way with conversational AI, the problem is not small, it's sort of scaled, right? Yep. So even with the doctor scenario with the chat, for example, conversational chat with a doctor, a wrong diagnosis just to one person and one doctor giving one person the wrong diagnosis, well, on a conversational chatbot, that problem is then exponential, right?
Yes.
Globally, And so that's where, again, you need people to police that and be able to bounce back and forth.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of new jobs, new stuff which is going to come up in terms of monitoring this whole set of conversations which are going around.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
Because every time when there is an opinion, let's say a bot gives an opinion, right? Who's owning that opinion?
Exactly.
It's
whose opinion is that?
Yeah, who is actually speaking it?
Correct.
It can be fabricated. Right. It can be biased.
Yeah. Is it a knowledge expert?
Right. Is there a knowledge expert sitting behind?
Correct.
So there are a lot of things to be monitored and policed, right? When you actually build a bot,
completely,
and build a language stuff on the back, right?
Yeah. Great. Correct.
So the other part which I wanted to just reiterate, Matt, is like. So as humans, we kind of started giving all the powers, like let's say memory power, right? We started giving to bots.
Right.
We started giving our selection powers. Like we are not selecting much, right? It's our recommendation engines and our data apps which are selecting things for us, right?
Correct.
And with the variety of data out there, we need them, right? And we kind of losing certain elements in the entire process of converting such bots, right?
Correct.
How are we planning in terms of what do you think when conversational AI takes the forefront? Every app or anything, whatever is being built, you just keep talking and it does the job for you. As a human brain, like what kind of powers we are going to lose?
Well, that's an interesting point because I think in general there's at the moment, especially in everyday life and with work, a lot of people get decision fatigue. Yes. So decision fatigue is a huge thing, right? You ain't bombarded on so many different fronts in regards to information. What to choose and stuff like that. So if you look at it from, say, a perspective of that there's some parts that you don't need to think about anymore, that opens your brain up to more focusing on things that you can make better decisions on, right? And having that time then to not do the mundane. So like getting back to just the simple thing of press releases, right? To sit there and craft a press release can take hours, right? To script it right, to think about it. And that's that can be just one person sitting in front of a machine, right? Interfacing, right? Now, if that process can be actually minimized down to 5 minutes, and then you can discuss that with humans, right? And look in the eye of the human and have a more human interaction. That's where I think conversational AI is actually, on the flip side, it's actually really quite lovely. Again, you've got conversational AI being able to interpret what you're saying with the speed of, say, even quantum computing that is coming out, spit you back results that make sense for you in turn to free up a percentage of your day in order for you to have meaningful conversations, to have you be more human to other people. right? Because I think in the workforce right now, people are like stuck on their phones, right? So what happens if we look at conversational AI as an enabler for more human interaction as well? You know, and I think that's what it actually does do, you know?
Right.
And I think in the future too, I can see that people in work are going to be doing more meaningful things and not the mundane. Like
So
any of these things, like if you do conversational AI, and like you said about the booking of a flight, etc., there's a whole process line, right, that needs to be executed from that, right? And if a conversational AI can book the hotel, can book the flight, can remind you about the flight, can remind you about the booking, can notify the travel agent, etc., right? This is all done, like at the moment, just say it's done all by humans, right? There is in this an element of, you know, someone not reading the email correctly, booking the wrong date. The conversational AI will book the right date, will book the right hotel, will book the right flight, right? And do it in a seamless way. So there's less stress in the workforce of the travel agency, right? There's less stress on the person that's actually booked it, right? Because they know that say in this case, the conversational AI has performed tasks right to specification without anything that's misconstrued, right?
Right. So basically, it's going to become a kind of an interface for everyone to just have it in front of us and just let the backdoor systems do stuff, and this is going to just reflect us like just how humans do.
Correct.
If I have an assistant, what an assistant will do, the entire thing will be done by this conversational AI, and it is going to just represent that task to me back again.
Yeah, correct. And I think too, like getting back to being more human. So you got the one side, you got the conversational AI becoming more human to understand and interpret what we're doing. On the other side too, we are becoming more human because we're realizing, well, the bot's going to be doing that, but now I can interface with more people, right? And in theory, if conversational AI is taking a percentage of your job away that is like mundane, boring work, then happiness in the workforce will actually improve.
It's going to create maybe 40 jobs will be lost, but it's going to create another 400 jobs in terms of like how creative things can happen, right?
Correct. Well, it's about I don't know if it's about deleting someone's job in its entirety, but it's reducing the amount of hours that they would potentially have to work in that week, right? And still, but their expertise is still required, especially with the toy box situation, to check that the AI is doing the correct thing and the correct outputs, right? But at the same time, it's freeing them up to actually then focus on where else in the organization can I speed up? What else can I do? Where else can I learn and level up my skills? And now that I'm not so stressed doing all these mundane things, what is it in the company that needs improvement, right? I think definitely in the future, the workplace of the future will be also rated on the happiness of its staff. Right, and that has a lot to do, I think, with how conversational AI can actually alleviate stress in the workforce.
Right. That's what this Ellie did in the militant stuff, right? So it was able to improve militants, and the maximum amount of stress would be there in the militant groups, right?
Right.
So
but it's also on demand. Like it's, you know what? I'm having a PTSD attack right now. You know?
Right.
No, literally, I am. No, I'm just joking. And the thing is, right now, I can get access to the chatbot when I need it. Not, you know what, you have to come 3 weeks later because our psychologist is booked out. You know, you can get it right now on demand, which is really interesting. Yes. And so in that case, you're helping people at the point of inspiration, not at the...
Yeah, I don't know how many psychologists are there.
Correct.
On the ratio level, right?
Exactly right. So well, that's where you can grab all the psychologists in the world, not all of them. You grab the A team, and that's what we're trying to do. What we're doing is actually grabbing knowledge experts. So we're doing OnePro Tennis, for example, and we're grabbing the best tennis coaches in the world, packaging them all together, and actually having their knowledge given to people, right? So
and in the same way, how they actually teach.
Exactly. Yeah. And so you can apply that with psychologists as well. Correct. Or coach. So you've got the best psychologists in the world, basically teaching on a platform that's educational based. Again, you've got that trust factor there, right?
And this is
then creating conversational AI around that.
Right.
Right.
And this is amazing. Why? Because like any athlete or any expert, right, in that particular field or industry is not alone, because there is a huge amount of coach and teaching which is happening behind him to make him an expert or make him a specialist.
Absolutely.
Right?
So this is actually really quite interesting because, so with OnePro, for example, we worked out that to make a pro athlete, it's not just about the pro athlete, right? I love Michael Jordan, but Michael Jordan isn't Michael Jordan because of Michael Jordan. That was a part of it. He's a strength and conditioning coach. He has a mind coach. He is an agent. He is a coach. He's a nutritionist. He has like the
another 15 people or 20
absolutely.
people working along with him to just make the Michael Jordan what he is.
Correct. So we're working with mind coaches, for example. One of the mind coaches that we have, Chris Hamilton, he's awesome. He's working with 30 pro athletes right now to get their head in the game right now. But we're working with him to actually record his knowledge so he can teach just, instead of just 30 athletes right now or one athlete today or whatever, he can actually teach globally anybody who wants to be leveled up from not just an athlete but to a CEO in the boardroom.
So it is democratizing not only content, it is democratizing skill and talent, right?
Exactly right.
It's
Absolutely.
going to be very uniform for everybody, that I get the same coach as what everybody gets.
Correct.
In terms of not only content, in terms of what I actually get as a coach.
Yep, and leveling up fast with it. So, you know, if you look at, say, Chris Hamilton, for example, and you're a CEO in the boardroom, for example, like this type of situation, and you want to go into a conversational chatbot, right?
Yeah.
You can get leveled up quickly in regards to getting your mind ready for that boardroom presentation, very quickly automated. Like I think that's where we're going with the future of it. But again, it comes back to, you know, the toy in the sandbox. Is the actual expert that's giving the inputs and the outputs, is that trustworthy? Is it going to put me down the right pipeline to give me the right information at the right time? You know, in a conversational way, so I don't just get disinterested and just, you know what, I'm talking to a bot, right? Yeah. I want empathy out of the chat situation, right? To think that I'm talking to a human, you know? And that's pretty amazing that even the conversational AI with the Turing test, for example, confused people for like 10 minutes thinking that it was actually a person.
Yes.
You know? I think also with conversational AI, there's going to be nuances to it, like context, right? So, for example, we're in Dubai right now, right? A conversational chatbot should know that that person is in Dubai and there's certain quirks, but they should know that I'm Australian, for example.
Yeah, it can just greet with the Arabic greetings, and it can keep going along in terms of what actually in the local environment.
Yeah, or it actually picks up that I'm Australian, for example, and then I use words a certain way.
Right.
Right, and then it talks to me more as an Australian would understand, right? Because we have our vocabulary and our slang like no other country, right? And so certain things that I say, people will be like, I don't get that, right? And so I think that's where conversational AI can pick up that nuance and then deliver the answer in a way that I understand it differently to say how Yaseen understands it, right? And that's where I think it's quite lovely in this regard, you know? Yeah. And it can also look at a situation and be able to judge it better, right? Yeah.
So I'll summarize it and we'll leave it to questions. So basically we started with content. Content was automized, then we have context, then we basically had voice, then we had emotion, then we had language, then we finally ended up with creating the same character, and where we are more close towards talking to a human, but we are not actually talking to a human, but we'll be talking to a bot. Yeah. That's what it is.
And now we're in the stage of rinse and repeat, you know? Yeah. Just look at what they're saying, give that feedback loop in, and just make sure and polish that so that it's, you know, getting more and more human.
Yeah, I think it's going to be exciting the next few years, what comes up in this
Amazing.
area. So we might be talking to people who might look like humans, but they are not actually humans. And we'll get a lot of information and insights from them, thinking that they are humans actually.
Yeah. Excellent.
So, yeah, any questions? I think we are done. We have just 3 minutes.
Hi, this is Gaurav from Ysquare Technologies India. So my question is around, so we talked a lot about positive aspects of the conversational AI, but there is a whole other side where it can do a lot of harm. For example, it can convince you to click on links on social media, which might be a phishing link. So my question is that, as a user's perspective, how to draw a line between till what point we have to use it, or some bulleted points which, as a user's perspective, you have to take care of while using the conversational AI.
But that's a very interesting point. So with what I was saying earlier, I think it's up to the businesses before they implement, say, a conversational chatbot in their system to basically check it, right? To proof it, whichever demand that is. So if you're talking about a medical side of things, really testing it and putting it through its paces before releasing it to the end user, where there can be a problem. So I think definitely there is a problem in regards to that end user just openly using things, right?
I think it is going to improve. Why? Because like as a user, you are still not aware, even if it is given as a plain text. You go and just put terms and conditions, document, accept, and you just go along with the data, right? When there is a conversational AI, at least there is someone who can actually talk to you and explain what is actually going to be the right thing and wrong thing about stuff, right? And you can choose. So it's going to get better only then, rather than getting. Time only will tell, but still, I see it as a positive.
Correct. I think it's with everything. So
The
even
awareness
when
is going to
Alexa,
improve.
even when Alexa first started, for example, like, or Siri, like people were doing voice inputs in and getting stupid stuff back, right? Over time, it gets more and more firmed up in regards to the concept, the idea, and the skill level, and to the point where you don't recognize it, right? But there can still be a problem with that user, say, misinterpreting it. And I said that's where I think that companies need to be looking at the AIs and what they implement, and making sure that the answers that get given back are actually correct, which is where that trust layer comes in, because you don't want to give people the wrong answers,
Thank you for the good conversation. So there was this talk in May, it was virtual, where Mo Godat, if you know him, he was with Google X and then wrote a couple of good books, was talking about AI and was describing it as what it is now, right? And was describing it as if it is a human. So I asked him, how would we know if it has our best intention in mind?
Correct.
And he just said, we don't.
Yeah.
Right? So I asked him, how can we tell or kind of control what's happening? Because it's moving, developing faster than we can track. And he said, we can't. We just have to facilitate around it, right? So the more and more we are seeing as like automation, we treat it by setting in validations. You as a program cannot do this if you don't have this. We can put validations on it. With AI, what we have to do is the only model that works is it's a person. It's as if it's a human being, as if it's a live assistant, right? So how can we kind of govern it, if I am using the right word, as if a new being is migrating into our domain and gonna take on some responsibilities, some decisions, right? How can we really govern it if we know that we cannot know what's happening in its head? We know it is gonna be smarter than us sometimes and is developing fast.
That's actually a really great point, because
Right.
like if you've got, say, an AI that's obviously building over time, right? Now you release it to your staff and just say for medical purposes, and you're conversationally interacting with it, and it's giving you the right answers. And then you go, okay, it's ready, let's release it to the end user, right? And then all of a sudden, you've got the more context getting added into the AI, right? That's not getting checked because it was checked, right? And then it's going to the end user, and then they're having an issue, right? And so maybe there it's actually versioning, a versioning control in regards to this one's being tested and it's fine. It's fit for human consumption, right? And you version it. And then as it improves, you go back in the ideation, and you test it again and then release it. So I think unless there, to your point, there's some rules and regulations around that, those toys in the sandpit can get painful.
So keeping it to a domain, that's the way. Not keeping it open to different things, but keeping each AI specific to a domain. Maybe that's how we can contain or govern or like predict what it is going to do.
Yeah, correct. Well, from doing it to a single domain, you can actually get context around that domain, which I think
So you control the
definitely
context.
helps.
You try to control the context. That might be the way.
Right.
In that domain.
Yeah.
And it is going to be only problem specific, right? If you are trying to build a bot out of, let's say, ChatGPT, and to, let's say, have a sales bot, right, which does sales for, let's say, on a retail store.
Right.
There is a contained set of use cases and stuff what you can actually control them with, right? It's not going to be, the sales bot is not going to talk about anything else other than sales, other than the retail store expertise, what it has, right? So a person who can actually build that can himself control what actually the bot can do.
Correct.
And that can be versioned, as you said. It can be versioned and moved along.
Correct. Yeah, I think it's grabbing those domain experts, as I said earlier, and then putting those domain experts together and then making the chat around, conversational chat around their domain expert, you know, in regards to what knowledge they have, you know, so that the knowledge that's getting pumped out the other end is actually correct.
The better point there was like the democratization. Like if you have 100 sales guys in your retail store, all the 100 sales bots will behave the same. There's no A, B, C kind of grades.
Yes, exactly. And I think too that's where workforces can actually step in too and be able to contribute as a workforce to a chatbot, right? Yeah. Because what works in one workforce doesn't work in another. There's different sales pipelines, different sales techniques used in different companies. And so if they want to keep it on an organizational level, you know, the tone of voice, for example, to their customers, they will have to start contributing to these AIs, right? So there's probably a huge opportunity there for companies to actually start getting their own employees to contribute.
Contribute, yes.
Last question. What do you think about strong AI, when it will be appearing and when the Turing test will be passed?
Sorry, we didn't get you.
When strong AI will be in place, which will pass Turing test?
So when the strong AI will be there available to pass Turing test?
Oh, right. When will this be?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I think we're still at an early stage yet in the sandbox to actually determine that, because based on domain, it might pass the Turing test for one lot of conversations, but not for another. You know, so I think it's a process over time.
And the Turing test will also keep evolving, right? It's
Exactly.
not going to remain the same.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
What an interesting session. Thank you, Matthew Hogan and Mohamed Yaseen, everyone. Thank you.